They tell you victory is loud. They show you explosions, medals, and flags. They never show you the man standing in the open, hands frozen to steel, heart racing faster than the weapon he is firing. Because the truth is simple. This gun did not just win wars. It selected who would die first. Every enemy knew where to aim. Every ally knew who would not be replaced. History remembers the machine, but forgets the boy behind it. And that is where this story really begins. By the time America entered the war fully, the M2 had finally found its place, not as a tool, but as a solution to fear. Everywhere it was mounted, commanders felt safer, numbers looked better, confidence rose. But confidence is loud, and war listens carefully. In the skies over Europe, bomber formations stretched for miles, flying fortresses bristling with guns, a flying wall of steel and belief. 13 M2 machine guns on a single aircraft, more guns than men, more responsibility than protection. The theory was perfect. Interlocking fields of fire, overlapping arcs. No fighter could slip through, but theory did not account for reality. Reality moved fast. Reality learned. German pilots watched carefully. They did not attack the bomber. They attacked the silence behind the gun. A single burst to the waist position, a shattered window, a body falling backward into the fuselage, and suddenly the fortress had a hole. The M2 screamed louder than any weapon in the sky, tracer fire cutting lines through clouds. But every tracer also traced the gunner's location. Every burst announced, "Here I am." Waist gunners stood in open windows. No armor, no shelter, wind tearing at their bodies, cold burning their skin, and fear locked behind training. Statistics turned cruel. 1 in 5 killed, 1 in 5 wounded, the highest casualty rate on the aircraft. Not because they failed, but because they were seen. Then there was the ball turret. Small, round, unforgiving men folded inside like cargo, twin M2s pointing down toward the earth. A position that promised firepower and delivered isolation. The turret rotated beneath the aircraft, disconnected from human voices, disconnected from escape. Parachutes left behind because there was no room. Trust placed entirely in motors and cables. If the power failed, if flak bent the frame, if landing came too fast, there was no second plan. Only gravity. Pilots knew this. Crew knew this. And missions continued anyway, because the bomb load mattered more than comfort. At altitude, the cold was not just cold. It was punishment. -40, -60. Skin freezing to metal. Breath turning into crystals. Gunners removed gloves to clear jams, and paid for seconds with fingers. Frostbite became more common than bullets. More airmen were injured by cold than by enemy fire. And still the guns kept firing. The tail gunner lived in a coffin of aluminum, alone, separated from the crew, watching the sky behind him, knowing that if fighters came from the rear, he would be the last voice. Bomber crews were young, 18, 19, 20, still learning how to shave. Now learning how to die. Tours required 25 missions, but only a third finished. The rest vanished into clouds, into fields, into statistics. And while the sky burned, the ground learned the same lesson. Jeep-mounted M2s rolled through Europe. Tank-mounted guns towered above infantry. Any movement behind the 50 disappeared. Walls collapsed. Cover failed. The gun did not just kill. It erased positions, and enemies adjusted. German soldiers stopped charging. They observed, marked, and eliminated the gunner first. Snipers waited patiently. Artillery zeroed in. Tanks aimed for optics and mounts. Because removing the gunner removed the threat. The Quad 50 arrived like a nightmare. 4 M2s firing together, 2,000 rounds per minute. Entire landscapes cut apart, designed for aircraft. Turned on men, trees fell, buildings vanished. And survivors never forgot the sound. But even here, the rule remained unchanged. Wherever the Quad fired, return fire followed. Gunners became magnets for destruction. And survival depended on seconds, luck, and whether the enemy missed first. By the end of World War II, the M2 had proven its value. No one questioned its effectiveness, but no one counted the cost correctly either. The weapon survived, the doctrine survived, and the lesson remained unfinished, because another war was waiting, and it would demand the same sacrifice. The war ended, but the lesson did not. The M2 did not retire with victory parades. It simply waited, because doctrine never questioned its cost, only its effectiveness. Korea arrived without warning. Different terrain, different enemy, same gun, same exposed men. This war was colder. Mountains replaced cities, snow replaced dust, and enemies did not attack in pairs or flights. They came in waves. Chinese infantry moved at night, silent, masked, thousands at a time. Human mass against mechanical dominance. Rifle fire was not enough. Artillery took time, and the M2 became the final answer again. Quad 50 mounts lit up the darkness, 4 guns speaking together, 40 rounds every second, cutting through bodies, clothing, momentum. Veterans described it as harvesting, not fighting, because when thousands charged at once, accuracy mattered less than endurance. The barrels glowed red, steel sagged under heat. Water was poured directly onto burning metal, not to save the gun but to keep it firing. Gunners stood their ground, Not because they were fearless, but because retreat meant collapse. When waves broke, the silence that followed was worse. Steam rose from barrels and from bodies, and gunners stared forward, waiting for the next movement. Again the pattern held. The gun saved positions and punished the men behind it. Korea taught endurance, but Vietnam taught proximity. In Vietnam, distance disappeared. The enemy was no longer far away. He was across the river, inside the tree line, behind the next bend. River patrol boats cut through narrow waterways, fiberglass hulls, thin armor, heavy guns. PBR crews were small, 4 men, no reinforcements nearby, and the M2 sat at the front, the first to fire, the first to be targeted. Ambushes erupted at close range, 100 yards, sometimes less. Bunkers opened up, rockets streaked low, and the river became a trap. Gunners returned fire instantly. There was no time to think, only to react. Casualties mounted fast, 6% killed or wounded every month, numbers that erased entire crews over a year, and still the patrols continued, on the roads. Another adaptation formed, not from command, but from survival. Convoys burned, trucks exploded. Drivers died without ever seeing the enemy, so soldiers improvised. Gun trucks emerged from necessity, welded steel, sandbags, scrap armor, and M2s bolted 2 truck beds. These were not official, not authorized, but they worked. Every convoy became a rolling fortress, and every gunner knew, if the ambush came, he would be the first to fire and the first to be shot at. Then came precision, a quiet evolution hidden inside chaos. Carlos Hathcock looked at the M2 differently. Not as a storm, but as a scalpel. A scope mounted to a machine gun felt wrong, but the results could not be argued. Targets fell at impossible distances, 2,000 yards, then more. One shot changed doctrine quietly, a reminder that power could be controlled, if the man behind it understood patience. But even here, the exposure remained. The gunner still visible, still prioritized. Vietnam ended, but nothing fundamental changed. The M2 rolled forward into a new century, unchanged, unquestioned, until the deserts came, and the cost became impossible to ignore. He thinks he is moving forward, but every step is repeating the same mistake. The truth is close, yet always out of reach. His confidence looks strong, but it is borrowed. Memory does not guide him anymore, habit does. Every decision feels logical, but none are free. He trusts systems more than people. He believes purpose matters more than accuracy. The past is not missing, it is being edited. This is not confusion, this is self-control turning into self-deception. The loop finally tightens, actions begin to answer themselves. Every choice leaves a visible mark. He can no longer pretend nothing happened. The system he trusted starts turning against him. Clues stop pointing outward and start pointing inward. The enemy becomes familiar, not external. Control slips quietly without drama. Purpose now demands a price. This is where intent collides with consequence. Truth finally stands in front of him, but accepting it means losing direction. Memory offers facts without comfort. Purpose begins to feel artificial. He realizes the rules were self-written. Control no longer protects him. Every excuse collapses quietly. He understands what he did and why. There is no villain left to chase. Only responsibility remains. The loop does not break, it completes. He stops running and starts accepting. Truth no longer needs action. Purpose dissolves without resistance. What remains is awareness, not victory. Memory stays broken, but honesty survives. He knows what kind of man he is now. No correction, only understanding. The story ends where it always was. Meaning replaces closure.